but a lot to get through there with the foreign editor of The Australian, Greg Sheridan, who timely, you join me here in the studio.
It's really great to be with you.
Quite a bit I want to unpack out of that, but let's just start with the clarity we got there from the President with the admission that leaked intelligence put out there principally by CNN and the New York Times, where they revealed that it was inconclusive whether these nuclear assets had been obliterated. They make the point, they say it was low confidence information, it was preliminary. The President kept saying it looks like they've been obliterated, that's not yet formally known. But he did say, and I think this was interesting, it will be up to Israel to conclude what they think, that everything's gone.
Yeah, Peter. So, look, I thought that was a pretty good performance by Trump and Rubio and Hegseth. I wish he wouldn't call journalists scum, but there you go, you know. So I've read a lot of intelligence reports, not quite as many as you, I suspect, but a lot of them follow a chain of suppositions. If we weren't entirely successful in completely staving in the whole cave, and if they took the uranium out first and so on, and if you went through a whole lot of if worst cases, the worst case scenario might be that we've only set them back by 6 months or something like that. I thought Rubio made a very powerful point when he said the leakers have characterised the intelligence, so they're not giving you a fair report of it. The intelligence was speculative and low confidence, and it had a range of possibilities from a few months to devastating. So I think the truth is we don't know for sure. There are a lot of things we don't know about this situation. If you're going to mount a criticism of Trump, maybe it shouldn't have been just a one-night show. Maybe it should have gone on for a few days until he was absolutely sure the job was done. But I thought he answered pretty effectively that intelligence report there.
I think you're right to say it always does look like this. It's a bit of backside covering until they have human intelligence and other sources on the ground, which is what he indicated Israel will provide to conclusively demonstrate that what they hope has happened has in fact happened. But if you look at the volume of ordinances dropped over that 24-hour period, you'd have to think they're close to getting the objective done. I guess the world will want this to be the wipeout that we all want to see of Iran's nuclear capability. We won't just want them wounded, we'll want this gone. Yeah,
you're absolutely right, Peter. It's impossible to believe anything survived inside Fordo. I mean, I say it's impossible. It's theoretically possible, but it's so unlikely because they dropped repeated bunker buster bombs, one on top of another, and the International Atomic Energy Agency head himself said the centrifuges can't survive any significant disturbance. Well, if 6 bunker buster bombs on your head doesn't constitute significant disturbance. Where I'm just marginally less sanguine is I don't know if they got how much of the 400 kilograms of enriched uranium they got out in advance, where they've dispersed it to. And I don't know how many other secret sites they have. The Israelis have excellent human intelligence, but you know, I covered the North Korean thing very, very closely, and the North Koreans said they'd given up all their nuclear programs. They even blew up the Yongbyon reactor. But at the same time, deep inside a mountain, they were going with a parallel program, and then, hey presto, it's tests and weapons. So I would be surprised if we ever know definitively that it's all gone, but it has sustained, in my view, massive damage.
And look what happened with all the capability of Israeli intelligence and US intelligence. What we saw happen on October 7 occurred under the noses of everybody. So I think we are right to be a bit, not sceptical, but wanting to have concrete assurances given the gravity of what could happen with these weapons in the hands of the wrong people. I took some other notes I thought was interesting. So Rutte obviously looks like he sent a very private message to the President, you know, stroking the Trump ego prior to his departure across over to the Netherlands. But he reiterated some of that language there today. He made it clear that he said, a man of peace. He said that a number of times, but also a man of strength. And that's been obviously parlayed into the room today because they have an announcement to come. He said it will be unanimous, this is Mark Rutte, that NATO members will go to 5% of GDP expenditure on defence. It's not just military capability, though. It's a little bit there's an extra 2% or 1.5% in there for capability in cyber and intelligence. That will be for a vote, but that's where they're headed. That's an extraordinary move if that's what's occurred under this president.
Yeah, it is, and it makes Australia look just as pathetic and pitiful as we deserve to look. So Ruta...
You were pretty strong the other day.
Yeah, well, I think we're going through a national security crisis and neither side of politics in Australia seems to be aware of it. They don't even read the newspapers, apparently, least of all the government. So Ruta, first of all, his tone with Trump is very good. Why not flatter a guy who's an egomaniac? I mean, you want something out of Trump.
But someone who's done what no other president has done. They've all talked about it, but if he has achieved what he's achieved, he deserves that credit.
Well, yeah, I'm not quite so sure about that because I think he's also been disgraceful on Ukraine, and I hate the way...
In relation to Iran, I ran clips all the way back to Clinton the other night. They've all said the same promise, made the same promise in relation to Iran, but he looks like he's actually delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. He deserves credit for Iran. I totally agree with you there. But Trump is good and bad. He's a mixed grill, You get...
Most leaders are, Greg, I tell you.
Oh, he's more mixed than most. I mean... Even today he's saying he's not sure about Article 5 of NATO and so on. And saying all that, hits at the credibility of the alliance. Now, you support the credibility of the alliance by taking military action in Iran. That shows you're willing to take military action. So that's great. So I think he's good and bad. At his best, he's better than most. At his worst, he's absolutely terrible. I think when he cut off aid to Ukraine and wouldn't give them intelligence to sight their weapons and so on. But in any event, I don't care. I don't care if Ruta is completely insincere. I don't care if he's never spoken to his wife in those terms. It doesn't matter. He's trying to get a result out of Trump. He's acting in NATO's interests, just as any Australian Prime Minister with an IQ above room temperature would act in Australia's interests. You wouldn't go in and say, hey, Mr. President, I hate your language. Look at Nakasone, the Japanese Prime Minister. He'd get 2 feet from the hole and he'd 4-putt so that Trump could win the hole, I mean, that's smart on Ruta's part. But the NATO defence figures are very important. So Ruta said everybody now has got to 2%. Everybody. Australia is still just at 2%. Most of them have committed to 3.5% and most of them are way above 2%. Britain is already at 2.5 and committed to 3. Germany is committed to 3.5. Now, the 5% is slightly dodgy because it includes not only intelligence and cyber, but also border control and defence infrastructure. But that doesn't matter. 3.5 would be a fantastic revelation. Now, Britain is committed to 3.5 by the early 2030s. We are committed to 2.3 by the... And a further point on that, when you reach that defence expenditure, year after year after year, you acquire kit, so it has a cumulative effect. We've never got anywhere near that level, so we don't have any of that cumulative effect. Albo is lucky he didn't go to NATO because he would look a disgrace at NATO. He would look the most frivolous
I contend
person.
That's why he didn't go in the end. I think some have said lack of confidence he'd actually get a meeting with Trump, couldn't be snubbed twice. I'm sure that was a factor. But also I think given the tone of the debate now in Australia really is focused on this percentage of expenditure in a way it has not been before, I think he would have been shamed in the room and it would have been, a significant embarrassment here at home.